In this episode of GMspiration, we will be discussing topics that may be triggering, including discussions of death and dying. We saw the lights of the fire through the gloom of a setting sun. The air whipped around us as we pushed through the snow to our salvation. We arrived, half frozen, at the Utgard camp. I feared the barbarians would tear us apart, but instead they welcomed us the moment we appeared. They ushered us towards the fire in the center of the camp, took the furs off their backs, and placed them on ours. The hospitality they showed us was like something out of a fairy tale. As my belly was filled with hot food and drink, I was able to properly take in the scene. We're in prime position next to the fire. 3 Utgard sat near us, fawned upon by other members of the tribe, a woman and 2 men. Each seemed to be enjoying themselves. Young warriors listened to the stories. Children crawled across them with that particular childlike affection. I understood not a word of their language, but it seemed to be a celebration of the 3. I was next to the woman, and though we could not speak, she shared her food with me, and I watched as the tribe soaked up her every word. Time marched on, and I felt the need for sleep take me. The celebration was similarly dying down. Slowly the tribe went to their tents, wishing the 3 well before leaving. A young Utgard man gestured me to follow him. I stood up, and by a whim that took me unexpectedly, I mirrored the farewell the tribe had given. I took the woman's hand and kissed it, and she patted my cheek gently and smiled. The young man took me and a few of my companions to a tent. The others split off into a second. The Utgard must have rearranged where they were sleeping to accommodate us. Exhausted and sated, but with an overwhelming desire to capture what I felt, I pulled out my journal and sketched the face of the woman, eyes full of love and a strange peace. I fell asleep. The next day I awoke to 2 Utgard children poking me. As I sat up, the piece of bread they had placed on my chest rolled onto my lap, and the children ran away laughing. I ready for the day and stepped outside. The camp was nearly completely packed up, save for the tents of my companions and I. There will not be a day where I forget what I saw then. Where the bonfire had been was now a pyre ready to burn. Upon this pyre were the 3 people from the previous night's celebration. I approached, as if in a daze. Their skin was pale. Light clothing they wore was touched with icy frost. They had frozen to death. I went to approach closer, but the young man who had guided me to the tent the previous night moved in front of me. He matched my eyes and then looked at another Utgard standing next to the pyre. A woman, appearing much like a younger version of the lady on the pyre, was gently placing dried flowers around the woman. As spring was only just upon us, they must have been collected nearly a full year ago. Ignatius. One of my companions called for me. I turned, and the young Utgard nodded his approval as I did. That's their way, Ignatius, said Bellemere. When they move camp, if any member is unable to make the trip, they have a festival, and then let the cold take them at night. They'll burn that pyre as they leave. Barbaric, isn't it? Look, they're even throwing rubbish onto it. Treating their seniors as garbage, despicable. As set preachers, a society is judged by how they treat their elderly. Should a senior fall, we should carry them. Barbarians. I followed his gaze. Bellemere was right. They were putting rubbish onto the pyre, but thinking over the night before, I sensed no barbarism. There was only love, and a sense that their way was one that would help the tribe. I pulled my journal out and carefully pulled the drawing of the woman free. I walked back to the pyre. This time the young Utgard did not stop me. I approached who I assumed to be the daughter. She looked at me and gave a polite smile before turning to leave. I spoke to her, knowing that she could not understand me. I'm sorry to intrude. I drew this last night. I thought you might want it. I held out the paper. She took it warily until she saw what I had drawn. Her eyes welled up in tears, and she placed her hand on my cheek, exactly as her mother had done. I smiled, tears in my own eyes. We left not long after that. We continued south, crossing the Yawol mountain towards the Evresian Sea. The Utgard headed west along the mountain range. That was the first time I met the Utgard people, but it wouldn't be the last. This episode of GMspiration is brought to you by Memento Mori's Alignment Tracker. Now with 372 alignments, including Lazy Evilish, Raisin and a Chocolate Muffin, and Pseudo-Ethical Faux Fur Merchant. Memento Mori. Remember, you'll die without our products. Morality has been debated for thousands of years, perhaps tens of thousands of years. But I want to start a little bit closer, in the early 2000s. The internet was in full march. The dot-com boom had just happened. You could video call people from across the world, and a very particular ad appeared on DVDs and in cinemas. You wouldn't steal a car, the ad said, going on to link stealing a car with downloading a movie. Obviously, there were some logical leaps here, where you have to equate the harm to a person who owned the car against the distributor of the movie. Or did you? They are both stealing after all. Some people argued that downloading a movie was a victimless crime, especially if you otherwise would not pay for the movie. Some also argued that if there was no way to legally get the content, that was also fine. Anime was being dubbed by groups of people and released for free, and at the time, no one was yet easily distributing for legal consumption. So what is the right moral argument? How can we break down moral codes and systems to create a more immersive world? And does it even matter? So let's start with some questions. In our starting story, are any of the characters evil? Was it evil for the daughter to let her mum die? Or Bellemere for how he spoke about the tribe? Or perhaps Bellemere when he revealed that he had known what was going to happen and didn't do anything? Perhaps it was the tribe for living this way. Well, I guess the short answer is it depends on your view. As we break this down, think about how you might craft NPCs or even whole societies that perceive right and wrong differently. With a good understanding of morals and morality, we can make situations that challenge our players and readers, as well as adding depth to our own worlds. Fair warning here, using this method, evil will truly be evil, and the horror of neutrality will be revealed. In Dungeons & Dragons, and many other role-playing games, there are character alignments: good, neutral, and evil, and chaotic, neutral, and lawful. In some games, and indeed in the first edition of D&D, there was only 3. Lawful, being honor and respect; chaos, being individualism and rebelliousness; and neutral, a balance between the two. This is actually closer to real-world moral systems than it initially appears. I'm going to provide a summary of quite complex ethical philosophy here, so I very well may be accused of oversimplifying very complex ideas. Disclaimer done, let's go. Generally, morality falls into one of 2 broad schools of thought. The first is utilitarianism, which can be summarized as the greatest good and the least suffering for the greatest number of people. The competing system is deontology, where moral actions are compared to a series of rules rather than the outcome of the actions. Rules, mind you, that often have very practical exceptions. For example, it is wrong to kill unless in self-defense, or it is wrong to steal unless saving a life. For deontology, adherence to these rules is the most moral choice. So let's dissect these with perhaps the most used moral test, the trolley problem. Using the most simple version, the trolley problem has a decision maker standing on a platform. Beneath them are 2 sets of tracks. On one track is a single person, on the other 5 people. The trolley is heading towards the group of 5 at great speed. If nothing is done, it will strike and kill the 5. The tracks can be altered if the decision maker decides to pull a lever on their platform. The trolley will change tracks, striking one person and not the 5. There are a few more details to the scenario, but they can basically be summarized to the effect that the decision maker is not able to take any other action. They cannot alert any of the people, stop the trolley in any other way, or somehow sacrifice themselves to save anyone. What we are left with is a single question: does the decision maker pull the lever or not? If we dig down, the root of this question asks, is it right to take action directly leading to a person's death in order to save a greater number of people's lives? For people in the utilitarian camp, the answer is simple: 1 life or 5, choose to save the 5 and pull the lever. For those in the deontology camp, they find this question a little bit more complicated. If the only exclusion to the rule of killing is in self-defense or in defense of another, this situation is neither. Choosing to do nothing will lead to the deaths of 5 people, but pulling the lever will mean you are responsible for the death of 1. Where this starts to get really complicated for deontology is if there are dozens, if not hundreds of rules. It can also be the case that their rules could be contradictory. It is also certainly the case that people can retrospectively justify their actions. History is full of people justifying what they did based on dubious application of ethical principles. But that is a complicated discussion for another time. Let's go back to the trolley problem. I have assumed the person standing at the lever was what we consider good. I will define good as someone that seeks to help other people or reduce harm or suffering. This is a motive rather than an outcome. To simplify, the good utilitarian pulls the lever, 1 death and 5 alive. The good deontologist does not pull the lever, but wishes there had been some way to save the other 5. If your decision maker was evil, what would be the difference? Well, the opposite of seeking to help other people or reducing harm and suffering is to seek to harm other people and to increase suffering. Now, an evil utilitarian will choose not to pull the lever. 5 dead, 1 survived. Our evil deontologist also decides not to pull the lever and is glad that they did not. To put this into our alignment box, we can replace lawful with deontologist and chaotic with utilitarian. If you have neither moral codes, you sit in the middle, with none. Good, as we defined before, is to help and reduce harm. Evil is to harm and increase suffering. And neutral, therefore, is neither. If you are not seeking to harm or help others, you are left with self-interest or servitude to something else, like an institution, God, or concept. To illustrate this, the operative from the 2005 movie Serenity, played by Chitwell Elijiofor, is committed to the Alliance. He does acts of great evil to further the aims of the Alliance. But is he evil? I would say no. Let's take this exchange between the operative and Mel. The operative: it's not my place to ask. I believe in something greater than myself. A better world. A world without sin. Mel: so me and mine gotta lay down and die so you can live in your better world? Operative: I'm not gonna live there. There's no place for me there. Any more than there is for you. Malcolm, I'm a monster. What I do is evil. I've no illusions about it, but it must be done. So as we see, the operative is committed to the Alliance. He does not do evil because he wants to. He does it because he thinks he must, for something greater than himself. So let's speed run some examples of neutrality along these same lines of thinking. A priest who works to spread their church's influence and wealth and only does good for that purpose? Neutral. They're committed to the church, not to the good of people. A druid that only cares for nature and preserving the circle of life? Also neutral. A thief that steals in order to live and survive? Self-interest? Neutral. The thief that steals for the thrill? Still neutral, as they're still doing it for themselves. The thief that steals because they want to make people sad? That's evil. The lawyer that defends anyone, regardless of their background or intent? Neutral. I could go on, but I'll stop there. An important distinction: a deontologist in this model may not follow the legal laws. That is something that was always confusing about the term lawful, because laws tend to revolve around the legal system and the laws of society. But take, for example, a priest may follow the tenets of their god instead. A devil may follow a set of infernal laws, but not legal ones, and a druid may follow the laws and traditions of their circle. A thief may even follow a strict honor code or the laws of the Thieves' Guild. So let's jump back to our first story. The barbarians are acting in the good of the tribe. They do not want to cause any additional harm or suffering to the 3 people on their journey that they know they could not make. That I would define as utilitarian. The most good for the most people. A quick death rather than a painful one. So what of Bellemere? Well, he did not intervene even though he knew what was happening. We can chalk this up to pragmatism. He obviously wasn't going to be able to change what they were doing. His comments around the teaching of Set indicate he is likely a deontologist. The rules trump all. Finally, there is our author, Ignatius. He appears to consider what the tribe was doing, withholding judgment. Given the chance, he shares something precious with the daughter. As I mentioned earlier, motive determines someone's alignment rather than the actions. because different alignments can sometimes have the same outcome. In this case, I wrote Ignatius as a good utilitarian, but he could also be a good deontologist. So let's make some characters using this method, and I'm going to challenge myself not to use the standard tropes like an evil lawyer or neutral thief. Now, as I mentioned before, some of these might get pretty intense, particularly when you start getting down to the no ethical system and evil or neutral. Starting off, we have good deontology, a soldier. Rach Dwarp, Lance Corporal and nipping at the heels of her older sister. Rach is hard-working and believes that evil wins when good people do nothing. She is strict, adheres to the guard's rulebook, and can quote every citation. She believes that everyone is good, but some people need to be reminded. Failing that, jail is the best place for them. By the book to the fault, she would give you the shirt off her back if she thought you needed it, but would not allow you to steal one. Rach makes decisions based on what's good and right according to two things: what will benefit people and what do the rules say. This is a classic, standard, good deontologist, or in the older alignment chart, lawful good. Next, we have good, no ethical system, guard, Veronica Dwarp. Dwarven guard, rank of corporal, and upstanding citizen. She follows the rules, most of the time. She will sometimes let people off with a warning if she doesn't think what they did warrants punishment. When presented with someone suffering, hurt, or in need, she always lends a hand. She has been known to bend the rules to help someone, but not for personal gain. She believes the world would be a better place with a few more good people. Veronica is driven to do good, but does not go out of her way to help large amounts of people, but will happily help people in front of her. She occasionally bends the rules, but does not go out of her way to help people. In that way, she does not reach the utilitarian ideal of the most help for the most people. Rather, if they're in front of her, she'll help them. So she's definitely good, but she doesn't sit neatly in the utilitarian camp, and most certainly is not in the deontology camp. Next, good utilitarian doctor. Dr. Red Hawkins, a fantastic doctor who grew up in the slums. Dr. Hawkins had a rough life, collecting scrap metal for the local smiths to melt down and be reused, and doing the odd delivery jobs. Hawkins chanced to work for an apothecary who recognized their dedication and work ethic. From there, Hawkins became an apprentice and has since become an apothecary, then studied medicine and finally surgery. Hawkins believes that the rules and social order of society do not promote the most capable, but rather those who are in positions of privilege. Hawkins spends much of their time helping people in the slums and working with communities to improve their living standards. This has earned Hawkins the nickname the Trash Doctor. Next, we have the neutral deontologist, a merchant. Introducing Octavia Sunderberg, merchant extraordinaire. Octavia believes strongly in the way of the merchant. She loves more than anything the trade, bartering, exploring new trade routes, and buying low to sell high. She is smart, entrepreneurial, and driven. Octavia also believes that her word is her bond, and her honor as a merchant is worth more than gold. While she is driven to make a profit, she is also driven to provide value to her customers. So sets of rules? Check. Deontology? Acts for the good or harm of others? No, she's neutral, so a neutral deontologist. Next is neutral nun, a chef. Lucy Bitterleaf, a chef like none before her. Lucy travels around the country, exploring local cuisine and sampling different herbs and spices. She funds her travels by catering for nobles as she passes through their cities and towns. To attend a Bitterleaf soiree is to experience the heights of culinary excellence. Lucy is completely and utterly dedicated to her craft, forgoing all else in its pursuit. This has caused Lucy to do some things that would end up on the wrong side of the law. She once caught and cooked and ate a dodo, despite them being highly endangered and protected. She's been known to cook for criminal underworld and mob bosses, and rumors are that she spent months perfecting black pudding for an elder vampire. Shocking as it may be cooking for the undead, the rumor is that she spent weeks perfecting the taste before serving it. What makes Lucy a true neutral is her devotion to something so singly minded that she simply ignores all moral and ethical considerations. She sits right in the middle of the alignment chart. No connections, no concerns, singular focus. Neutral utilitarian, magician. Marvolus Griptide Hatterskew, renowned wizard and alchemist. He believes that in the search for power, nothing is too far. Marvolus' thirst for knowledge has led him to perform experiments and commune with things he would rather hide from the world. Not because he is ashamed of them, after all there is nothing more noble than the search for knowledge, but rather because they might lead him to become ostracized, and that would slow down his research. A fantastic patron, but make sure you keep being useful, otherwise you might find yourself combined in his latest creation. What he does is always balanced to benefit his search for magical mastery over all else. He cares not for good or evil, therefore he is neutral, but he is in search of the thing that will bring him the most knowledge. That's a utilitarian trait. Evil deontology, the innkeeper. Barnabas Dernstov, proprietor of the Black Anvil Tavern. Hanging above the door of the Black Anvil is a sign reading, "Troublemakers will not be tolerated." Upon entering the tavern, you are met with the content chatter of patrons, and the tavern is clean and warm, and a large well-tended fire burns in the corner. The smell of food and drink wafts plentifully throughout. Barnabas, never Barney mind you, is a large man, a former adventurer. His dark brown hair tied back in a ponytail and a short, neat goatee. He is polite and the costs are fair. That is, until someone breaks a rule. If any client assaults a server, steals from another patron or the tavern, or starts a fight, Barnabas's demeanor changes. A large grin spread across his face, and he grabs a baseball bat from under the bar. With a glee only possessed by the truly insane, he will exact brutal discipline. What makes Barnabas evil is how much he loves beating up unruly patrons. He always stops short of killing or permanently injuring because that would have an impact on his business. So, Barnabas follows the rules, generally provides a good service, but he loves hurting people. Evil deontology. Next, we have the evil, no ethical alignment. The Prince. Prince Epidemius Rathdown. Third in line for the throne and feared among the staff. The prince does not long for power, and he has enough money. What the prince is bored. What is there for him to do? He indulges in all manner of pleasure, and the greatest is the pain of others. He does not go out of his way to inflict pain. He is not seeking to do some great evil or positioning himself to extend his reach. Rather, he's just cruel. Pranks, causing the staff to cry, tripping them, and then telling them off for spilling food. The prince is a sort of lazy evil that one finds at the top of society. Now remember, a good utilitarian will do the most good. An evil utilitarian, the most evil. The prince just sits in the middle. He doesn't really care. He is doing this for his personal pleasure, and for him, he just likes annoying people. He is an evil, no ethical boundaries, lazy evil. Lastly, we have our evil utilitarian, the politician. Normally, in TTRPG worlds, politicians and lawyers are described as lawful evil. But just because you follow the law publicly doesn't mean you are bound by them. Hector Greenleaf, politician, family man, and running for the mayor of Newton, population 5,000. Greenleaf believes in building a robust justice system, supporting the poor, and expanding new trade agreements, at least on the surface. In truth, Greenleaf is a cruel man. He covets power, but not for himself, because it allows him to commit acts of unspeakable evil. Greenleaf has organized for his political rivals and their families to be killed. He enjoys watching people beg for his help, or even better, their lives. He intends to throw the town into chaos, scapegoating various groups to avoid the blame. He comes across as generous as he gives away his money and seems to expect nothing in return. In truth, he simply does not value money. Greenleaf does not prescribe to any lofty goals. There are no grand designs or claims of greater good. He plays his part, he waits, and then he strikes. Greenleaf is motivated to do the most evil as possible, and that is why he's chosen to become a politician. He is evil, utilitarian. That brings me to the end of Morality, Part 1. To wrap things up, we've talked about moral systems, utilitarianism and deontology, and how you can apply these to the standard 9 alignment chart. We ran through some examples, including creating 9 NPCs that conform to the alignment chart. In the next episode, I'm going to use what we talked about here to design some societies. Be sure to tune in. Thanks for listening to GMspiration, and remember to have fun.